folks, we're working on site in a customer's home today. I'm building brand new countertops out of sheets of wood using simple hand tools. I'm going to show you how to build and pour on site, saving you 10 times your time and money versus other big box store countertop options. You can do this to renew the countertops in your space. Come along with me. I'm going to show you how to do it step by step. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. You got this! All right, guys, we're on site, day number 1. The first thing you need to do when working on site is properly prep your project. Step 1, we're going to cover the floor completely because we're going to pour these in site. The kitchen's pinned in between walls. What that means is it would make for a difficult install, bringing in a giant U shape that fits in between these walls with uppers. So in this case, whenever I'm pinned in between walls and have uppers to fight my install, I'm gonna choose to pour on site. Prepping your project for an on-site pour is not that difficult. A few keys to success: cover that floor with a nice ram board style material. It's a rolled up floor protector designed to not allow liquids to penetrate through it. Don't just use a canvas drop cloth. That is not enough protection. My customer has just repainted their older cabinets. They're looking quite nice. We're gonna cover those right before pouring. So step 1, we're covering that floor. Then we're building these tops out of sheets of wood on site with simple hand tools. All right, learn how to prep right now. Steps are simple, let's do it. These are brand new laminate floors, and I'm not gonna be the contractor that messes them up. This ram board edge tape is perfect for going on delicate surfaces like laminate. It won't stick too much and damage those floors pulling it up. The ram board brown tape, on the other hand, let me grab it. Orange ram board tape is designed for the perimeter, anywhere touching a finished surface. This cheaper stuff, the regular ram board tape, is designed to tie the two sheets together, making a perfect waterproof system. No epoxy or anything spilled is gonna touch your customer's floor. It's good practice to draw up the kitchen in a bird's eye view, like you're looking right down at all the pieces you're making. I'm gonna draw up all the pieces I'm gonna create, because like this guy and this guy, I can just build with measurements. Drawing up the kitchen does a couple things. It gives you the exact square footage, so you know just how much epoxy to mix up. And we're also gonna take those measurements and build a lot of these pieces right off those measurements. When you're pinned in walls and you're doing tile backsplash, that's when you have to be most precise. If you're pinned in between walls and you're throwing up your own epoxy made backsplash, you have a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm gonna measure out this kitchen, give myself a little bit of wiggle room, then go build these tops outside. So we got boom, wall, 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 oven. X will be the edge. Fridge. And then we have that piece here. I'll draw him. And then we have a little wall cap. Okay, let's go measure it up. First measure this. We'll just say 70. We're gonna add 1.5 inches. We're gonna go to 71.5. 16, perfect. Rather than get out my template material and template this project, I'm gonna make it a hair big. I'm gonna make it a 1/4 inch big. And then I'm gonna put the piece up here and scribe. I'll teach you how to scribe that piece nice and tight to the wall. Okay, here's my wall cap. The customer didn't want to extend this. They're not going to sit at this little bar. It's just a wall cap. So I'm going to give it standard overhang on each side. I'm going to give it what we call a dog ear. So I'm going to give it 1.5 inches little leg that kicks over here and it trims the piece perfectly. So as you look into it, it'll be nice and trimmed to look like that. I'll add 3 inches to the length of this, which will be 1.5 inches on each side. 74 3/4. 4.5 plus 3. Okay, that piece is done. Now let's measure the big boy. 117.5. Now that's a tight measurement. I'll say 117.25. This job is going to need a seam. So since we're pouring on site, I'm going to do it before I pour epoxy. So you're going to walk into this kitchen and you'll never see that I had to glue 2 pieces of wood together. That's a huge benefit with working with epoxy. Okay, we have an oven that sits here. It's back there in the corner, but I marked how far they wanted to grow this piece. So I got my little mark there. We're going to call that 29. The oven is 25 3/4. Now let's figure out where we're going to go put the seam. I'm just going to put the seam right on this support. Yep, that'll work. This is the piece we're going to cut now. It's piece 1. Now I have backsplash, so I have a little bit of wiggle room, which is really nice. So the backsplash is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick plus the epoxy. So really, I could have a 1/2 inch gap and my backsplash will sit down and still cover that. You'll never know. That was a trick we had to do with granite. And sometimes we would have, when we have to do a seam, we'd set the piece in, we'd cut away the sheetrock, the thickness of the granite slab, peel the sheetrock out, then we can move that sheetrock 1/2 inch, usually it was a 1/2 inch sheetrock, into the wall, just so we could bring this big old heavy bad boy in without chipping out the seam. That's a pro tip. If you're pinned in walls like that in your epoxy kitchen and you have to do a seam, you pour this off site, bring the first piece in, cut the sheetrock out, get it out of there, then you slide it away. Now this one has a little more wiggle room to install it. But you also don't have to worry about epoxy shattering like you do granite, so don't stress, you can flex that bad boy right in. We'll draw up this little fella. I'm making 2 little L's and 2 straight pieces. Easy peasy. This is piece 2. There's my kitchen pieces. 1, 2, we'll call this 3, and this one 4. Now let's figure out the square footage. So I'm making this into 2 pieces, so I'm figuring out the square footage of each little chunk. 1,000 divided by 144, 7.5 square feet. When you get your measurements in inches, so your length times width in inches, then divide by 144, that gives you your square footage. 71.5 times 16.25 divided by 144, 8 square feet. This is how you know how much to get paid. This is how much you know how much epoxy to mix up. 39.6. We'll say 40 square feet. Sweet. That's 1 2-gallon kit. Now we gotta do backsplash though. We can't forget about that. To determine how tall to make your backsplash, which your standard backsplash is 4 inches. But sometimes your plugs will determine. If your plug's in the way, rather than notch around that plug, just shrink your backsplash a little bit. It looks way cleaner having a straight line rather than this. No, thank you. So it looks like we're good here. We have plenty of room to make a standard 4-inch backsplash. Plenty of room. This one, let's see. So we're gonna have 3/4 up. Nope. We're gonna make this a 3-inch backsplash. Just because my plate will cover that and not interfere, and we won't have to do that little notcherooski. So this guy will have 3, that'll have 4. Backsplash cut list. So these guys, my returns, I'll cut a hair big, and we then cut to perfect size once that back is installed. Bingo wings. Now we'll figure out how much square footage in backsplash. Not much backsplash square footage. We can probably squeeze that all into 1 2-gallon kit. I would say a little over $200. We're gonna coat this kitchen. That's just an epoxy cost. So then I'll tell you how much we spend on MDF. But really, we're gonna flip this kitchen and they're gonna sell this house for a nice, sweet profit in this area. They've already did comparables. They got this place for practically nothing, held on to it, fixed it up. They're gonna invest a small amount into this kitchen, and that's gonna be the showpiece walking in. That's gonna sell this thing real quick. Hot market. Guys, check on this stuff in your area. There we go. We're at 47.6 square feet. Let's squeeze that into a 2-gallon kit of epoxy and turn these countertops into gold. They're gonna be sweet. The customer wants earth tone exotic pour, which is my specialty. Let's do this. But first things first, we gotta cut up some countertops. It's a beautiful, sunny, cold winter morning here in Oregon. So I'm gonna throw on my sweatshirt. We're gonna go out undercover and start cutting some countertops. So my customer has a top mount sink. I'm gonna pour this first, then cut out the sink after it's cured before I apply the ultimate top coat. Then you won't have any runs or you won't have to plastic off the sink basin and worry about epoxy dripping in that cabinet. Cut that top mount sink out after you pour the epoxy. If this was an undermount sink, I definitely would have to plastic off that sink basin. I'm gonna apply waterproof membrane to the bottom of the countertops where I do that where the sink is, and I do that where the dishwasher is. If you're uncomfortable laying out your kitchen from your measurements, grab some template material at our website, stonecoatcountertops.com. So if you're a little bit nervous laying out your countertops via measurements, click the link right above me. That's gonna take you to our 5 vanities in a single weekend. Mike shows you how to use our template material to template that cabinet so that fits nice and tight and perfect. We have some wiggle room today, so I'm gonna lay this out using my measurements. It's a pretty simple process. You're gonna want a level, you're gonna want a square, tape measure, and a pencil. We'll lay this thing out. We'll use the saw guide to cut it out nice and perfectly, and a jigsaw to finish up those 90-degree cuts. I'll rip some 1-inch strips and add a drop edge to this project. Then it's almost time to start playing with some epoxy. So I'm gonna lay out piece number 1. We're going 93. And that is 24. 25 3/4. Backsplash. Backsplash. Okay, I'm ready to cut it out. So this is piece 1. I bet I could fit piece 2 right next to it. Piece 4 will fit this little wall cap. Okay, now this guy's X'd all the way around. We've still got room to do some strips on here, you know? We'll rip some 1-inch strips with the remainder of this bad boy. Nice, that piece is number 4. So, check and check. We're gonna build 2 and 3 on the next piece, but let's cut this first. So that's where I stop. First things first, let's determine we have the right depth. That'll work. Okay, that puppy is done. We just gotta put the drop edge on it. Okay, jigsaw alert. In you go. Okay, that piece is done. You know, if you're in a bind and all you have is that little 90, you could probably break the MDF and use your sheetrock knife to finish that cut, especially if you're doing a rock face edge like we're gonna do. It can be imperfect a little bit. We're gonna slap Bondo on there and make it look like an actual slab of granite. So don't even sweat that. Snap it, use your sheetrock knife if you don't need a jigsaw. So really the only tool necessary, you will need the jigsaw for the sink though. So get a jigsaw. They're only like 99 bucks. They last a lifetime as long as you don't leave them on the job site. All right, 2 pieces down. Okay, MDF. We're gonna build this bad boy, the 69 by 24.5. Pretty cool that all I'm using is this circular saw and a jigsaw. You could build these on site with those 2 little tools. Because I guarantee you this happens every time we're out doing these. The neighbors are gonna go, what are you doing? Oh, we're putting in Stone Coat Countertops. Ooh, what's that? Never heard of that. Epoxy Countertops, you haven't seen them? Come check them out. Can you do mine? Boom, now you're paying off your countertop. You're paying off your couple $100, $300-400 you just spent to renew your countertop, because your neighbor's gonna pay you to do theirs or pay you to teach them. Oh, my backsplash is right there. Now let's attach the drop edges. Okay, this guy's getting a drop edge around all 4 sides, so that's easy. We're gonna cut 2 of these. Perfect. Cool. We use this 23 gauge little tiny pins to attach the drop edge, and we also use wood glue, Tight Bond 2. That wood glue is going to be a stronger than nails bond. The pin nails hold that drop edge till that wood glue dries. Going to be solid. 1 1/4 inch long, 23 gauge pin nails. That's what we use to attach the drop edge. I use my finger as a straight edge. I'll hold it like that, and then as I squeeze out, nice straight line. I'm gonna squish it down and hold it flush to the front. That ooze out is so perfect. That is perfect. So what that does is seals up that line. If we didn't have all that glue push out like that, not the end of the world, because we're gonna come to a rock face edge. But let's say you're just doing a round over edge and it's straight down, it's nice and smooth. I would still Bondo that just so you don't have this line show up. One down, 3 to go. After we pour this, then I'll take it in, notch out my little notch so that trims out that wall cap perfectly. It's gonna be awesome. 1 down, 3 to go. You guys can do this. You could build these right on site, and you can see why I marked which way the edges are, right? This piece only gets a drop edge here and here. So that'll be quick and easy. Does anybody know the difference between Tight Bond 2 and Tight Bond 3? Let me know in the comments below. All I noticed was a giant price increase. I'm pushing this towards the front of the countertop edge. But again, if you're a little bit off because of that rock face edge I'm going to be doing, no big deal. So I'm going to come back and grind and make this edge look organic and unique, like Mother Nature made it, like it's a piece of chiseled stone. So it doesn't matter if you're a hair off or if these corners aren't perfect. We're gonna grind that and radius it anyway. So we'll let that dry, and then we come sand that perfectly flat, round that top and bottom edge just a hair. That makes it epoxy flow. That's if you're doing a round over edge. We're doing a rock face. We're gonna make this look organic and natural, look like a chiseled piece of stone. So if you're off a hair, it doesn't matter. 2 down, 2 to go. Seeing the pieces come to life right before our eyes. Boom. That's a seam. Doesn't need a drop edge. Backsplash. Doesn't need a drop edge. Backsplash. Doesn't need a drop edge. Fridge. Whenever you're butting a refrigerator, an oven, we're not going to chisel that. We're going to do a straight radius edge so that fridge or oven can butt nice and tight to the edge of the countertop. You don't want that chiseled wherever you're going to butt an appliance. The wood glue is nice and dry. We're gonna prepare this MDF edge for an epoxy coating. So to do that, you can do it a couple ways. You can round over this top with a router and sand that flush. Some good practice is just to coat a thin layer of Bondo on that front edge. Then you sand that flat, you round the top, the epoxy will flow nice and even. I'm gonna choose option 2, which is a rock face chiseled edge. And I'm gonna create that on site right now with the metal fiber sanding disc. These are available at stonecoatcountertops.com. It also comes with this backer. It hooks right up on your grinder. I'm gonna, in an organic fashion, just grind away at the edges. Wherever I have an oven, right here I got the oven, I am keeping that nice and square. So you're gonna see both epoxy edge methods. One video right here, right now. Don't blink, this step is pretty quick. Perfect. That's all we need to do. Just rough it up, add organic movements. You don't want the same pattern chopping down the whole top. So just change the angle you're holding your grinder, hit the bottom a little bit. I don't go too aggressively on the bottom because I still want my edge to remain nice and stout. So I'll just give it a couple little dips and chops in there, or whatever you want to call it. And now this edge is ready for Bondo. I'm going to continue on with the rest of my edges, just roughing them up with my grinder, and then it's time to mix up some Bondo. So here's a really good example of when you would need to address your edge, your drop edge for Bondo. So right here, this edge is solid. Wood glue squeezed out the whole way. No wood glue. See that void? You put epoxy on this, that's gonna translate into your epoxy. It'll show. If you have any little voids like that, fill it with wood glue, proud, and then sand. Or a better method, use some Bondo, mix up a little Bondo. I'm gonna be putting a Bondo here anyway, so I'll just bring it back. We'll sand that back flat, and then that's gonna completely disappear. This will not go through on your final application as the epoxy flows over the edge. This is an 1/8 inch router bit. So this is a scrap piece of MDF. I just wanna make sure it's cutting perfectly before I take it to my finished countertop. Bingo wings. Okay, awesome. As I'm grinding on that rock face edge, I'm really not taking away from the depth of that countertop. I'm just kind of contouring the top and bottom, adding a couple chiseled char marks in there, but you're gonna add a lot of visual detail when it comes time to add that Bondo to the edges. So in a perfect world, I'd have a variable speed grinder, but as I'm showing you, you don't really need it. It just, if people are intimidated by the grinder, you just slow it down and take your time, not a big deal. If the grinder intimidates you, grab 60 grit on a random orbital sander. You're gonna do the same thing. You can do the rock face edge using your sander. Just takes a little longer. It's like using a handheld Phillips versus a 20 volt impact driver. You know what I mean? It's both gonna get the job done. One's just gonna do it way quicker. By golly, if you don't have a random orbital sander, you don't have a grinder, you can make the rock face edge using a utility knife. You're just gonna score it at different angles, kind of do the same sort of thing. That's gonna take you some more time, but it's gonna give you the same sort of look. Since I used a grinder on my other pieces, I'm gonna continue and carry on using that grinder so it doesn't look a little bit different. So here we go, mask up, let's roll. I've built this whole kitchen on site. We'll have the rock face edge done today by myself. So you guys can do this. Follow along in this video. Update the kitchen in your house, or make some side money and update the kitchen in your neighbor's house. I went to buy Bondo at the giant orange box store, sold out completely, and pointing me in the direction of all the boats and cargo ships in the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, saying, oh, sorry. Guys, don't fret. You wanna make a rock face edge? Stone Coat Countertop has your Bondo solutions. Check us out, stonecoatcountertops.com. We carry Bondo, all purpose. It makes super sweet looking epoxy edges. Rock face edition, the only way to go in my opinion. If you can, do Bondo outside. Why? Because it stinks. You're gonna mix up and add the hardener to the manufacturer's instructions. They give you cool little pictures and everything. Start with small batches if you're not used to working with Bondo. It's quite simple. It's like playing with Play-Doh on about a 7-minute timer. So once you mix, you got about 5 to 7 minutes to apply that to the edge. We're gonna tap it, give it some visual detail that will come back and sand away any sharp points. And it looks so sweet once that epoxy and undercoat hit it. I just mix right on top of the project I'm working with. We're gonna come back and sand it, and I'll just sand this area, get rid of any residue before we start to paint it. All right, it's good practice to kind of mix this up before squeezing it out, because what happens is it kind of separates. And then for this size blob, I've done this a ton, so I'm just gonna kind of go about that much. Give it a good mixing. This is not very much at all. Okay, taking your gloved hand or Bondo spreader, we're going to apply some Bondo right to this edge. So I'm applying, pushing it on nice and firm. You don't need much Bondo at all. Come back and scrape the top. Apply a little Bondo and rub it in with your fingertips. Bondo's a little easier to clean up than epoxy, so I just gotta have a board under here to catch any drips. As the Bondo starts to thicken and set up, you're gonna take your hands, come back and add some detail to it. You can tap it, create a high bunch of sharp points. That's a little aggressive, or I kind of do a little mixture of both and I rub it. The Bondo is starting to cure. It's becoming thicker like paste, but still plenty pliable to add these visual details. Get all this residual off. It makes for a heck of a lot easier sanding when this dries. That Bondo is gonna dry and be ready to be sanded in about 20 to 30 minutes. I always will throw a fresh set of gloves on because the Bondo starts to set up on your fingers. So get those gloves off. Always have plenty of gloves on site. You won't regret it. The Bondo does wonders to the MDF edge too. If you guys are building your countertops out of plywood, you definitely want to Bondo the front. Otherwise, all those layers are going to show through the epoxy. So Bondo the front edge after you put whatever edge you want on it. And then when you go to pour epoxy, you're not going to have any lines showing up from all those plies. Applying the Bondo to the edges is as simple as that. It's a real easy step. It takes no time at all. Just mix up small batches, apply it, and mix up another batch. My Bondo here that I applied to my first piece is ready for sanding already. You got a couple sharp points, little high points like that. I'm gonna throw 220 grit onto my random orbital sander, give it a quick sanding, just taking away any of those sharp points. I want some of this detail to stay behind. That's what starts looking really sweet and natural when the epoxy flows over. See why important it's in place. Boom. Like a glove. Nice. Each kitchen cabinet is unique. So if these drawers were any higher, I would have to add build-up strips to bring up my drop edge so the drawers were open. But we're clear. We're good to go. No build-up strips are needed. And I have nice sturdy boards running across from front to back that'll be able to secure this countertop to the cabinets. Same thing with here. You can see my drop edge, plenty of clearance for the cabinets to still open. We're good to go. You could not do this with granite. Bingo! So I'm just gonna snug it right where the backsplash is gonna sit. Keep that trick in your back pocket. If you're installing backsplash on your countertops, you can screw down through the surface all the way tight next to the back of that cabinet. Your backsplash is gonna sit up there. No one will ever know that that was attached that way. Bingo. So what's going on there? We have a piece of trim here right by this dishwasher, this fairly new dishwasher. So I'm gonna take my little buzz tool, trim that down about 1/4 inch, and then this countertop will sit nice and flush. We're gonna get ready to Bondo that seam. So I use dowels to seam the backsplash outside, and then I'm gonna coat that as one unit. Why didn't I use dowels for this project? Because it would be mega hard to get this L and the dowels connected right here when you're pinned in between walls. So what do you do in that case? You saw I have a nice support bracket or a 2x2 right under the seam. I'm gonna fill this seam with Bondo, which will dry rock hard. I'll overfill, sandbag flush. You'll never know that seam was there. I'm gonna tape off my cabinets before I do that because I'm gonna overfill that seam so when I squish it together, it's gonna squish out all that Bondo, and I know that thing is filled up and gonna be solid. Yep. Clean as a whistle. Oh yeah. Bingo. Okay, that worked. Nice. All right, let's dry fit it. We're not all the way done, so boom. Yeah, that's gonna look nice. So I'll center this. I'll scribe it to this wall. I could already tell that this is really crooked. So I'll put a straight edge along here. I'll trace it. I'll cut my 1.5 inches. We'll notch that out with a jigsaw or a skill saw. And then this will sit nice and tight and have a little dog ear that trims this little wall cap out perfectly. All right, guys, we're gonna call it a day. I'm gonna eat dinner, sleep. I'll be back tomorrow morning. We're gonna seam this countertop. We'll sand it back flush. Then we're applying the undercoat. I also will need to prep the wall and the cabinet for an on-site pour. I'm gonna pour my backsplash on my table right here in this room. Tomorrow's pour day. I'm not gonna be able to sleep. It's the best part of the whole job. Today, it wasn't that tough. One-man show, completed all this work in about 6 hours. We'll be back tomorrow. It's time for some epoxy. Because we are pouring these countertops on site, I'm now gonna cover and protect the cabinets. We already covered the floor. I'm gonna take delicate release tape, cover right below my countertop edge. The next step is covering your cabinets. I like to grab 3-foot rolls of 3mm plastic over at the Home Depot. We'll tape that to the top and to the bottom so nothing leaks out. The next step, I'm gonna seal the back of the countertops with paint grade latex caulking. That's just gonna keep the epoxy on the countertop and not flowing down the back wall. We'll mix up some Bondo, fill our seam, sand that back flat, and then we're applying some undercoat. Let's get to work. Prep on site is mega important. The last thing you wanna do is let epoxy run down beautiful cabinets or get on the customer's floor. So take precautions. Also, delicate release tape. Put that first row up delicate. You don't wanna peel stain or paint or whatever off cabinets. Delicate release is your best bet. And when you go to release that tape, peel it off, be delicate. If you're super familiar with prep and want to skip this step, check out the chapter descriptions. We got your back. Skip ahead to whatever you need to study up on, or just long play the video. That helps us grow. If you're getting value out of this project, guys, like, subscribe, help our channel grow. And if you're really enjoying it, you're like, dude, this is awesome. I'm learning. Share the video. That helps us blow up. Thanks, guys. Now back to work. I'm even going a little bit up under that lip. That's gonna be nice. I'm gonna kind of pull it tight and then roll the bottom down to your ram board, and it makes a really good seal to the deck. No. I'm going to tape about 1/4 of an inch up from the countertop and then cover the freshly painted wall. We're putting backsplash on this project, so you know the 4 inches up is going to be completely covered. So just raise your tape up so it's not in the epoxy. And then when we go to peel this, it won't be stuck in anything. Oftentimes epoxy projects will have, you'll use spray paint additives, because spray paints, metallic powders, and dyes all fight each other inside the epoxy to give you natural cool effects that you can't get anywhere else. So that's why we're masking above the countertop as well, in case I want to use some spray paints, fracture, add the granified effect, all sorts of stuff you can do with spray paints, and we won't have any overspray on the wall or the cabinets. Will be nice, we'll be good to go. It's a good practice just to cover everything below and above. And now you have a nice sterile work spot to stay sticky free on the stuff you don't want sticky. Handy masker, these things come in handy. It applies the tape directly to the paper. All right, I'm gonna use all-purpose Bondo. This stuff is easily sandable. It's pretty easy to work with. To fill the seam, I'm gonna overfill it, sand it back nice and flush. I'm gonna overfill the front, re-rock face that. You're never gonna know that this was made out of two separate sheets of wood. Just make your mixing station here right on the countertop. It's the easiest way to go. We'll scrape off as much of the residue as we can while it's wet, which we'll save for some sanding time later. Now take it and really force it in. Use the tip of that Bondo spreader. Force it into the seam. Remember, we have a nice solid support under there, so this Bondo will not push through into your cabinet. Okay, nice. It squeezed through that. Came all the way through my sheet of MDF, so I now know that thing is filled up. I'm gonna fill up the front seam now. Use your finger to force it in there. The key, guys, is to overfill this, because we're gonna come back and sand it and you won't see that seam line whatsoever. If you're seaming MDF together and you have the space to do it, dowel that seam. So I'm gonna show how to do that with this little dowel jig you could pick up at your hardware store. They're pretty inexpensive. You clamp this to the piece, we're gonna drill in dead center and install with wood glue these little dowels right here on my seam. We'll pre-seam that with the dowels, we'll let it dry, and then we're gonna router the top and sides of all our backsplash, and then our backsplash is ready to be undercoated, then epoxied. I'll move my table inside, and we're getting ready to pour some epoxy today. It's gonna be a good day. So we're doing 1/4 inch dowels, so that's this littlest hole here. You have little center points on your jig. Center up that hole, clamp it down. I set the depth here of how deep I need to go, and we're ready to go. Pretty easy with this little jig. Now we do the same thing to this bad boy. Yeah, this is how I would seam MDF on a countertop if I wasn't pinned in walls and I could squeeze my dowels in. But there'd be no way to get your dowel tied in there, you know, because it's going to be sticking out. And you have to, no way to do that in between walls. So you got to do what we just showed, which is have support underneath your seam and then make those two pieces of wood one, the Bondo. A little bit of wood glue in each one of those bad boys. These will be tough. This just keeps me from having to have a seam in that giant run of Backsplash. I'm gonna round over the top edge of the Backsplash using an 1/8 inch round over bit. You can also do that by hand using the random orbital sander. Start with like 120 or even 60 grit sandpaper. It's pretty easy to do it by hand and get it quite uniform. But since I have this little trim router, why not use it? It's perfect. All right, I'm gonna sand this dry to Bondo, back down flush. I'll hit the front edge, then we're gonna paint some undercoat. I can feel the Bondo all the way through that crack. That is good to go. What's up, Stone Coaters? How you guys doing?
What's up, man?
I'm coming shopping. What's up, guys? I'm in behind the scenes at Stone Coat HQ. I'm gonna pick some colors. We're doing brown marble for today's project. So I'm gonna get some whites, some browns. I'm gonna get epoxy dyes and metallic powders. When you combine those all into one bucket, they do some fantastic stuff to get that countertop looking super natural and mega good. Let's do this. Couple browns, a couple bronze, a couple diamond dust. I don't know which ones I'm using. I'm just getting a bunch of our earth tones. White metallic, couple coffee. Pour me a cup. I need a couple white dye, brown dye.
Right behind me.
Bam. I think that's all I need. I'm gonna use some paint grade latex caulking and caulk out the back of the countertop, keep that epoxy from flowing off the back. Then I'm gonna apply 2 coats of undercoat, and then I'm gonna tape off this front edge, make a tape dam. It's optional, but it's a pretty good and important step if you're gonna be pouring an exotic pour countertop technique. It's gonna hold that epoxy right on the surface until we come back 2 or 3 hours later, peel the dam. The epoxy will flow nice and even, leaving behind high definition, really fantastic epoxy edges. You can glue or screw. I'm gonna hover that over. Squish. Nice. I'm gonna sand this Bondo back down smooth and then router this as one unit, and then it's ready for paint. Let's move this table in and start painting. It's time to apply the epoxy undercoat, guys. This project's gonna be some brown marble. Our undercoat is unique. I'm gonna tint it with some of our epoxy dyes. I'm gonna pour it into this mixing container. It's about half a container of our dye. It's good practice to delint your rollers. I use masking tape. Delint them if you're doing the ultimate top coat. Delint them if you're painting. It just gets rid of any loose fibers in your rollers. Just gonna dunk my roller in this bad boy. No bonding primer is needed when going over wood. That's only needed when you're going over slick existing surfaces. I really like using this undercoat. It dries really quick, so you don't gotta wait around to start pouring epoxy. You wanna go pretty thin on your coats. We're gonna do 2 coats. So don't blob it too thick on that first. That's kind of just painting. Shouldn't have to teach you how to paint. And that raw MDF, like where we routed and sanded, that's gonna be the area you really wanna focus on. It's gonna absorb that paint like crazy, like a sponge. So make sure you have plenty of paint on any raw cut piece of MDF. More chocolate brown, just what I was going for. Let's go. Coat number 2. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty. It's good practice, guys, if you're gonna be using the epoxy dyes to tint the undercoat, to mix thoroughly. I would use a mixing head on a drill or mix real thoroughly with a paint stick to incorporate those dyes into the undercoat. So this is 47 square feet, 1 can of undercoat. Should do it. Okay, that's it, guys. We're gonna let the undercoat dry, and then we're gonna tape off those front edges, and then it's time to mix some epoxy. Thanks for sticking around this long, folks. Check the chapter headlines below That's gonna take you right where you need to learn a little bit extra. We've built tops, we've prepped the job for an on-site pour. We're painting backsplash, we're applying undercoat to those countertops. It's time to pour now. Let's do this. All right, guys, it's time to apply the tape dam. I just use regular old standard contractor's masking tape, and I'll apply a couple of rows on the front edge, side edge, anywhere there's an edge over your cabinetry. What the tape dam does is it holds my exotic pour right where I leave it. I'm gonna leave the tape dam on for about 3 hours. I'll come back and peel the tape after the epoxy has started to thicken. That way, when I peel it, it flows nice and uniform, leaving really high definition edges along your epoxy project. That's a pro tip for really sweet, awesome, natural, realistic looking exotic pours. This is really handy too, because when that epoxy gets thick, I peel this tape, it's gonna make that edge look really nice, and it's gonna stick mostly onto this plastic. There won't be a mess we're walking in as I pour this project today. Taping the edges is really helpful. Do a little support dam right there. All right, I'm gonna do one more row here in the middle, just to reinforce this. Now I've got a little sticky sticking up here, right? So this helps reinforce the dam and keeps you from sticking to it while you're working with the epoxy. I'll take little strips, sticky side up, go down to your project and slide this right to it, walk it up, and fold it on over. Now when you're going to peel this, when you're working on it, you're not gonna stick to your tape dam. While you're down here taping your edges, double check your plastic. Make sure it's stuck really well to your cabinetry. Oh, this is looking good. Now's the time you're gonna wanna repair any plastic that might come loose well before I've mixed the epoxy. So check your plastic, that's a very good practice. The areas that like to leak are these inside corners. So I'll tape under the edge, roll that up, tape under the other edge, roll that up, and then tie up both pieces together with one more piece. That's the best method to keep that epoxy from leaking in your inside corners. Whenever you're working with epoxy in wintertime or fall, it's getting cold, it's a good practice to warm up your epoxy in front of a space heater or a hot water bath. What that does is it warms up your epoxy. It makes it easier to mix. It makes it easier to remove air bubbles that you incorporate into the epoxy while mixing. It's an all-around good practice to warm up your epoxy just a little bit in the winter months. So don't keep your epoxy in the back of your pickup truck or in the cab of your pickup on the day before you're gonna pour. Bring it in the house, let it warm up. It's a really good practice on site to have a mixing table. I brought in my sawhorses and my plywood, covered it with ram board. That's where I'll be pouring my backsplash, as well as mixing up all my epoxy. That keeps you from working on the countertops, because as you work your way through the kitchen, you're eventually gonna run out of countertops to work with, because you gotta pour your epoxy on that. Then what do you do with all your mixed buckets and all that? So have a little table, cover it with plastic. All right, let me go grab the painter's tripods, get that backsplash lifted up so the epoxy will flow well. And then it's time to mix. Woo, let's do this. Today's exotic pour is gonna be 2 dyes and 3 metallic powders. We're going with our normal recipe, Stone Coat Countertop Epoxy. Stone Coat is a 1-to-1 ratio epoxy that you mix for 2 minutes with a paddle mixer on a drill. If you don't have a paddle mixer and a drill, that's okay. Use a paint stick. You're gonna double and extend your mixing time, scraping the sides and bottom of that bucket. The biggest key to success when working with epoxy is starting out with a good mixture. I have nearly 50 square feet of epoxy, so I'm mixing up this entire kit. We're doing an exotic pour. It calls for a few more ounces per square foot, but I'm only doing 1 coat of epoxy. Tomorrow I'm gonna come back and apply the ultimate top coat. That brings the top back to being 100% food safe and insanely durable. If you're doing just a clear coat, you're gonna do a black galaxy, or you're doing a recipe like Carrara marble, you'll mix up 3 ounces per square foot, and that's when you use the notch trowel to evenly spread the epoxy. The exotic pour, you skip that step. You're pouring a little excess epoxy, letting it self-level and do its thing, leaving behind some amazing natural effects. All right, grab the bucket and mix for 2 minutes. So when talking about color selection with your customers, I sent her to the YouTube channel. Figure out what color scheme your customer's looking for and then recommend a few of our videos. We have tons of different color schemes, tons of different exotic pours, and awesome natural epoxy techniques that make your countertops look natural and very beautiful. My customer said she really liked my dining table and the caramel marble. Either one of those two would look really nice, but I'm gonna keep this one on the lighter side. I'm gonna turn 2 quarts instantly white. Ooh, look at this bucket. So when doing an exotic pour technique, you're gonna divide your mixed epoxy into separate mixing cups. We're gonna tint those our colors. I'm going brown liquid dye, white liquid dye, coffee metallic, white metallic, and some diamond dust, just a little bit. So first things first, we're gonna tint a large amount with the white dye to keep this project nice and light. And then over here, we'll be tinting our metallic powders and brown dye. A little goes a long way with these metallic powders. Try to get those powders wet like that before really starting to mix, and that keeps it from getting airborne. Bam. Now you can pick up the speed. You need to mix the powders a little more than you do the dyes, because you want to make sure to get rid of any clumps. So after a good mix, scrape the sides, scrape off your stick, give it another mix. Cup with white and brown dye, barely mixed. The exotic pour technique is super simple. All you need to do is take your tinted epoxy and layer it back into the larger mixing bucket. We're gonna take that mixing bucket over to the countertop, pour it out, let it self-level while we come build another exotic pour to pour on these other countertops. There's really no wrong or right way to do this. I'm just layering colors. You can also take spray paints and mist in between some layers. Hey, I brought some hammered bronze. Let's add a little bit. Spray paint can go in there and fight everything. Oh, I never added some of this yet either. That's gonna be cool. You could tell I've been in no rush. I've mixed all this myself. I'm not panicking. Stone Coat Epoxy has tons of open working time. No need to panic. No need to be in a rush. There's plenty of time for this to sit in these buckets even. You don't want it sitting in a large mass. That'll speed up everything. So we're gonna go pour this bucket out and see what we created. There's many ways to apply this. You could do a ring pour, diagonal, all sorts of different stuff. Mother Nature is very perfect in her imperfectness. You can go any way you wish. I'm gonna kind of go striated, like this was a slab of granite and we just cut this part out. So even here, I'm gonna kind of give it a flow front to back, and we're gonna flow all the way across the countertop. Check that out. Let's take that bucket and pour it right out. I'm gonna go more towards the center of my countertop. As I build my other bucket, it'll give it time to self-level. Well, I think that's a W. Okay. I just filled up what I used with the remainder of my epoxy, adding a hair more powder, give it a quick mix, and build these buckets again. That's an undermixed white and brown dye. Look at that. I need to make more mixed dye cups like that. Undermix them. It's almost a baby exotic pour inside of an exotic pour. You've seen it here first, folks. Stone Coat Countertops. If that didn't deserve a subscribe, I don't know what did. We're turning mini exotic pours into big exotic pours, into sweet looking countertops. Subscribe, ring that bell. Help us grow, guys. Thank you. We've got some crazy cool stuff coming your way. We're gonna be on site like crazy in 2022, showing you how to up level and fix your worn out existing surfaces. Good thing we cover stuff, folks. Okay, so this is all gonna level out, but what you can do to help this is just grab your finger and pull it away. Break up, make any dry areas wet, and that epoxy will flow really well. Grab this blob. I'm barely touching that leading edge, just lubricating that wood. There's plenty of epoxy on here for this to self-level. This is gonna look fantastic. These back corners are difficult. Just pour a mass and then walk it over your piece. Make a vein. That happens in nature for sure. Whew, that's sweet. So I put my heat gun on high and the highest heat setting. Okay, that'll work. My tape dam is doing really good. Yeah. What I don't like is this white line. It's too white for me. So I'm going to see what this heat gun can do for it. Softens everything, kind of spreads it out. Yeah, it's helping. A heat gun is a really good tool to keep in your back pocket when working with epoxy. You can use it to remove bubbles. You can use it to meld colors together. So I warmed up the epoxy with the first pass, and now I'm blowing some browns and whites to feather them out and meld them really well. That's awesome. That took that too white of a vein and melded it pretty well. So I'm going to use the heat gun to quickly go over the surface of the countertop to eliminate any air I incorporated into the epoxy while working with it. Just sweep the surface an inch or two. Really easy process. All I'm doing here when I go fast is eliminating air. When I slow down and start heating it up and pushing on it, I'm moving colors. I like that bit of white. I'm not touching that one. That's cool. This is looking really pretty. To speed things up, and the most efficient way to remove air is a propane torch. It's going to be the same process. You're just going to sweep the surface of the epoxy. It takes 1 or 2 passes and all the air will be out of there. All right, we'll let that chill out. Let's get the remainder of this epoxy into the bucket and pour this guy. All right, here we go. Scraping the buckets. Almost done. This has been fun. Ooh-wee. Any spots you don't like on the project, I'm well past an hour after mixing, and I'm still able to kind of get this to the way I really like it. I didn't like how white that one was, so I'm just kind of melding those colors together. It's working really good. I ran out of epoxy, but thankfully I ordered a hair extra. So I'm going to mix up a little bit. I just have to address my backsplash, and then this project's done. By the time I'm done with my backsplash, we'll be getting up on time to peel that tape. So don't blink, guys. Peeling tape is coming right up. get this undercoat wet, that's gonna self-level and coat over it really nice. All right, folks, it's been multiple hours. It's been about 3 hours since we've mixed up this epoxy. The countertops are looking super good. I cannot wait to show my customer. So to kind of get the epoxy going in the right direction, I'll come in and tug down on the whole thing. You can really see how gelled up the epoxy is. So before you peel it, just kind of encourage it to go the right direction for you by peeling this down. Okay, we'll come through this section. Nice, I had no leaks on this. Okay, now we're gonna take it off, peel down from the top. See how much thicker it is. It's gonna keep those color techniques and lines and striations as it flows over. The epoxy is much thicker, but not too thick to continue to flow and self-level. And when I'm peeling straight down, and you can see it kind of brings that epoxy down with it. I'm gonna come back with my finger and come grab this and start walking this down, just like I did on the backsplash. Get this area wet below it. And then those color techniques are gonna flow right down that edge. Ooh, it's just perfect timing. Ooh, yeah, perfect. See how the colors come right over? Yes. The detail on my edges really went through the roof when I started doing this tape dam. Taking off those bottom drips, and it's also a coating the underside of that wooden countertop, so it's kind of encapsulating it in epoxy helps. Almost done leveling, guys, so kind of come here with a flat paint stick and scrape those final drips off. There isn't going to be many. That's how you get rid of your drips. No sanding on site. All right, guys, as you can see, not many drips on the plastic. We waited just the right time to peel that tape. We're gonna let this dry overnight. The paper I have above the countertops is about 1/4 of an inch. We should be good to go, leaving that alone. We're gonna come and peel that tomorrow before applying the ultimate top coat. We're gonna come back tomorrow also and cut out our sink before applying the ultimate top coat. Get that dry fit, make sure it's perfect. Then we're gonna top coat the whole job, let that dry, come back and install that sink. I'm quite pleased with how this project turned out. The earth tone marble flavor I just created is gonna match the floors and the cabinets really well. I'm gonna stick around for a few more minutes and continue to hit these edges. That way there's no sanding tomorrow. The bottom of my edges will be nice and smooth and coated with epoxy. It's gonna look really nice tomorrow. We're gonna let this dry. I'll be back tomorrow. What's up, folks? I'm here to install a top mount sink. My epoxy countertops have cured. They laid out perfectly level. I'm really pleased. Between hour 4 and 5, I scraped the bottom of these drips. I use my glove finger and a paint stick to smooth the bottom. All right, to install a top mount sink, you're gonna need a tape measure, some masking tape, a square, a drill bit, to do your corners and a jigsaw to cut out that piece. It doesn't take much time. I'm gonna show you how to lay it out right now. A couple things to take into consideration when laying out your top mount sink is knowing where your front face frame is. You don't wanna start the top mount sink cut right where your face frame is. So go a hair behind that. Usually when you center that sink template front to back, it will completely bypass that face frame, but always double check that. If you had an undermount sink on your project, you're gonna want to cut that out before. The reason I lay out and cut my top mount sinks after I pour, it's gonna flow perfectly. I'd have to do a tape dam in here, worry about some epoxy getting in. This way I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to do little tiny sections, which can be a little bit difficult for the first time user of epoxy. So if you have a top mount sink you're building from scratch, I would cut out my top mount sink after I pour. You will use a little bit more epoxy, but I think in the end, the countertop looks best. Okay, let's find center of our window here. 29 would be 14 and a half. Now we find center of the template, 30 and a half, 15 and a quarter. Oh my goodness gracious. Perfectly on 15 and a quarter. How's that work? Ladies and gentlemen, the fat guy in the overalls at least can do math. Okay, bingo. There's center of my sink. 15 and a quarter, 15 and a quarter. Another thing to take into account is how far your windowsill sticks out. Sometimes your faucets come up. So always make sure you're clear of that, which we will be. I'm gonna go back just a hair. 1 and a half plus 3/4, 2 and a quarter. I think we're good right there, guys. That's my sink. So what I'm gonna do now, you could either hold it or just tag it down a little bit so it doesn't move. And I'm holding down my template as I mark it. All right, we need somewhere for the jigsaw to start. So use a drill bit and hit your 4 corners. Just your normal wood bit. We'll cut right through the cured epoxy and wood. That's just a 3/8 drill bit. All right, again, I'm just using a wood blade as well. And my blade fell out. Lovely. And it fell into my taped off cabinet. We follow the old survival motto, 1 is none and 2 is 1. So have spare jigsaw blades for whenever the opportunity would arise that your blade falls into your taped off cabinet. So have some extras. Let's try that again. Perfect. Ooh-wee. Money. Nice. Plenty of room for the faucets. This is sweet. All right, guys. The sink fits really good. I'm gonna get cleaned up. We're gonna sand the tops. I'm gonna sand the front edge just very lightly, just a real light scuffing because I'm about 20 hours after I poured these. So they're quite fresh. I could almost get away without sanding. If you come back to your job within about 16 to 18 hours and they're subtly a little bit sticky or tacky, which these aren't, they're past that, so that's why I need a little scuff. If your tops are a little sticky or tacky, That means you could do your clear coat without having to sand. You come back, they're hard, no tack, no stick. You need to lightly sand with 220, clean the dust with 91% isopropyl alcohol, and then we're ready for either the ultimate top coat or an epoxy clear coat, which is our Stone Coat Countertop Epoxy, just mixed up clear, applied over, troweled, chopped, torched. That makes the countertop completely food safe from those additives we added in. The ultimate top coat, which is what we're doing here for this rental, that's gonna make these countertops absolutely bulletproof, last for a very long time, and it also brings those countertops back to being food safe. So I'm gonna go set this sink down, give it a quick cleanup, and it's time to sand. Lightly sand the project by hand or with your random orbital sander with 220 grit. We're just scuffing up to make a mechanical bond. This top here is really on the borderline of being able to pour without sanding, but I'm gonna sand just to be safe.
I go about speed 3.
I'll use these maroon Scotch-Brite pads. I use these to hit my edges. This is gonna be the thinnest application of epoxy, are those vertical edges. We overcame that a little bit by keeping the tape dam on those edges for an extended period of time, letting the epoxy thicken before we let it flow over. Now you get a thicker, more high definition edge, but we still wanna use concern, use these maroon Scotch-Brites, and the edges just need a light scuffing, not much. Clean off the dust with isopropyl alcohol. Now this top is ready for some ultimate top coat. These maroon Scotch-Brites get in the nooks and crannies of my rock face edge without over sanding. It's perfect. All right, we're sanded up. You can see in the reflection, it's just a little scuffed up. Not too much, not too aggressive, is all just a light sanding is all that's needed. I'm gonna go take care of all that backsplash. Be right back. Don't forget to wipe that dust off. 91% isopropyl alcohol. This stuff is awesome on the job site. It's awesome to clean up epoxy spills. If you get wet epoxy areas you don't want it, isopropyl alcohol does a fantastic job cleaning it up if you got a whoops-a-daisy. Countertops are prepped, sanded, cleaned, and ready for top coat. Our sink's been cut in. The ultimate top coat is ready to be mixed. All right, remove the lint from your dry rollers. We use a 1/4-inch nap dry roller. I'm gonna use some masking tape. I'm gonna tape it to my sink cutout. I'll roll on the tape. Remove the lint from those rollers. You're gonna use one roller to apply the top coat nice and heavy to the countertops. And then you're gonna rotate through your dry rollers. When they get too saturated, you're gonna discard and get a brand new dry roller. We're gonna lightly feather and dry roll after we apply nice and wet to remove excess material, leaving a nice sprayed on tight finish. I'm gonna use the little frame as my wet roller, and I'll use these long frames as my dry roller. Since I'm here by myself, I'm just gonna set up a bunch of dry rollers so I don't have to fumble through switching my 1/4-inch nap rollers when they get too wet. Here's how to apply the ultimate top coat. Shake part A vigorously before mixing with part B. You're gonna measure at a 2-to-1 ratio. Mix with a paint stick for a couple minutes. Then we're gonna add up to 10% of water. That's gonna thin the material from really thick Elmer's glue to a nice thin latex paint. That's the consistency we're looking for. We'll take the mixed top coat and apply it into our paint tray, and now we're ready to apply with a wet roller to the countertop. I'm gonna work in sections. I'll apply wet and then I'll dry roll off and feather that dry roll. And I got, 50 square feet, and that's about a whole kit of ultimate top coat. All right, now that B is in there, guys, we're on the clock. You don't need to be fumbling all over yourself and sprinting, but you have less working time with the top coat than we do the epoxy. You can see the thickness of that, right, folks? Pretty thick, a little less thick than Elmer's glue. but we're gonna thin this down with some water. Much thinner, folks, see that? All right, guys, I'm gonna pour that into my paint tray and start to apply. So I'm gonna completely saturate my roller, roll some of it off, and apply this nice and heavy to the countertop. I'm looking for a nice, heavy, even coating, and then I'm gonna use my roller, my wet roller, to initially dry roll the project. Do not forget those edges. And you also want to make, when you do this rock face edge, really do multiple angles as you roll down that top edge, so you hit every bit of that unique chiseled rock face look. I'm gonna grab my dry roller, and with pressure on the frame of the roller, I'm gonna dry roll this project. Very light pressure here. I'm removing excess top coat, up and back. Nice, perfect. Okay, now hit those edges. Very light pressure here, folks. I'm just letting the roller glide right across the surface. Hit all those angles. Whew, that's gonna look good. Holy Toledos. One down, a couple more to go. Nice and heavy. You can see the roller remove the material. And that's exactly what you want to be doing. After this section, I'm going to switch to a new dry roller. Just hovering it when you dry roll, no pressure. If any pressure, it's towards that frame, and you work away. If you're just starting out with the top coat and it's not rolling out like this, you've probably not added enough water. Thinning the material really helps it lay out really nice. That's like 5 minutes after I've dry rolled. It's nearly cleared up completely. It's gonna look so good. I'm gonna let this dry completely, and then I'll be back tomorrow to install the sink, de-prep, and install the backsplash. It's been about 24 hours since I applied the ultimate top coat. We're ready to install the wall cap. We're ready to install the backsplash and get cleaned up. What's up, folks? It's the final day on site. I'm here to do just a little bit of finish work, and this job is a wrap. I'm going to install the backsplash. I'm going to caulk that out. I'll get rid of all this plastic and paper. I'll roll on a waterproofing membrane around my sink and under my sink. That'll keep this countertop solid for many, many years. Get a roller pan and a roller. We're going to apply the waterproofing membrane around the perimeter and underneath where my sink is. Really don't need much of this. It's thick. It goes on pretty quickly. No moisture should be getting here because this is a top mount sink. And when we go to install this, we're going to silicone the perimeter. So when you silicone the perimeter of your top mount sinks and you do that right, no water gets under there. This blue tape is good stuff to use on fresh ultimate top coat. It comes right up. All right, it's time to cut in the dog ear on my wall cap. I'm going to tape off this end, scribe my wall, mark it, take it outside, give it a quick cut with the jigsaw, and this is ready to glue down. So I'm centering my piece right now. I'm holding my stick along that wall. That carries that same angle out. Hold your stick down. Mark your line. Boom. And go cut that. So I know I had 1.5 inch overhang on every side of my wall cap. That shim only got me about 1 inch. So I'm gonna add 1/2 inch to this. Right along that scribe line we made with the shim. perfect cuts. Boom. So just get yourself a straight edge, follow that wall on both sides, and your cut's perfect. .117 and 5/8. Barely cutting anything off. Nice. Boom. So I made these intentionally long, just in case your first run's a little sticks off the wall a hair, whatever may happen. You want to cut these right to size, which that is 68 and 5/8. Measure twice, cut once. I'm double checking that measurement. 68 and 2 little lines past the half. I had an employee tell me that kind of stuff before, and then I told myself I didn't do a good enough interview. But I sent him home with a tape measure. He started practicing and counting. Before we knew it, he was a tape measure pro. So it's okay, guys. Start where you need to start. If you got to count each 16th, do it. You'll get better. Nice. All right, 2 more sticks. Nice. Backsplash is fitting really nice before I glue it in. So always dry fit your backsplash. That's a good practice, guys. That way, ooh, that looks cool. It's gonna match well. That way you know before you have glue all over it, you're fitting nice. All right, let's get some silicone. I'll put about quarter-size blobs on the back, and then the silicone will suction cup these down. I'm also gonna use silicone to glue down my bar top. I'm gonna glue my wall cap down with this. It's gonna marry it to that 2x4 and never come off. I go about in the middle of my board because I don't want silicone to squeeze out the top. Beautiful, man. Nice. Hi. Well, we're looking really good, and I haven't even caulked it out. The backsplash has been silicone nice and tight to the walls. I'm now gonna seal the top and bottom of the backsplash. So I use silicone to glue to the wall. You can also use clear silicone where the backsplash meets the countertop. For this project, I'm gonna use Alex Plus by DAP White. It's a latex paintable caulking. I'm gonna caulk that out on the top. It's gonna look so close to the walls, there will be no need to paint. All right, apply your caulking heavy. Use your finger to get rid of all the residue. Squeeze out all the rest. I'm pushing against the backsplash and the wall. Going nice and flat. Get the majority of it off. Don't worry about all that residue. We take that tile sponge now, wring out most of the water, and just wipe it right across. Switching up your corners. Anybody using this sponge, a damp sponge like this, can be a pro at using latex caulking against the wall. really clean. So the homeowner wanted to extend the countertop. They requested I extend it over to give them a 30-inch opening to hug their oven a little bit tighter. But they didn't extend over their sheetrock here, and I got a pretty good gap. So I've taken some rolled up paper towels. You can also use foam backer rod that they sell at the Home Depot. But you know, paper towels, I've gotten away. When you're out in the middle of nowhere, paper towels work perfectly. Just roll them up, and we're gonna stuff it back in there. And what that does, that keeps the caulking from drooping too bad. Gravity is gonna make that caulking go down. And because this is a bigger gap, it'll leave a big dish. Sometimes 2 layers of caulking will be necessary to completely fill it once it's kind of shrunk and settled. This way I'm not filling a whole tube of caulking behind this. We'll get it nice and flat, and then we'll come back and paint this, and it'll blend in better than a giant hole here. So just improvise on site is the key here. So now that I have those paper towels in, I can overfill this. And I'll probably use like a shim or something to tool it because it's so big. Plus this is back behind the oven. Not many people even see back in here. So once you paint it, it'll probably be trimmed out enough. Bam. To make a real nice watertight seal where the backsplash meets the countertop, you want to use 100% silicone. This stuff is mold free for, this one says lifetime. That's kind of nice. Silicone Supreme, mold free for a lifetime. We're going to seal the bottom and the verticals of our backsplash, which now makes this countertop 100% watertight. You could open up a fire hose on this bad boy and no water is going to get down behind your cabinets. You want to put as little as possible, where when you tool it, that's all that I took off. And that small tip is crucial to seal that up well. The small tip, if you add too much, if you're new with silicone, guys, don't be afraid to tape off the bottom of the backsplash and your countertop surface so you don't smear silicone everywhere. I started out in the window industry, and then I went into the countertop industry, and then I went into the general contracting industry, and all 3 of those, you need to know how to use caulking. So when you do this right, you're only pulling a tiny bit off with your fingertips. Don't forget these verticals. And I give myself a very, very subtle angle. When you do that correctly, it helps with the amount of silicone that goes in as well. Bingo. There you have it, folks. Building and installing Stone Coat Epoxy countertops on site really isn't that tough. I hope this video gave you some confidence to start that epoxy project in your home. And don't forget, you can go over existing surfaces without ripping them out. We have videos that teach you step by step here on our YouTube channel, Stone Coat Countertops. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember, you got this, and we'll see you on the next video.